right. And again, welcome. It's good to have everybody with us. Over the course of the week, we're offering a series of different webinars aimed at parents, grandparents, caregivers, community members, and others of those who really care deeply about the children around us. And of course, the pandemic with COVID-19 has had a tremendous impact on the mental health of our young people and on us as adults. And so we wanted to make sure we were addressing that and addressing the needs in our community. So in order to get on the webinar today, you did register on our United Way website. And just to let you know, we never share that information. We only use those emails internally. And what we'll do is we'll send you an evaluation, a survey at the end of every webinar, especially if you've attended multiple webinars, still hoping you'll fill out each individual survey and give us information about the content of each one. So, and they're open. If you didn't get a chance to, if you attended Mondays, for example, and you didn't get a chance to do the survey, I'm leaving those open for a little bit of time. And so you have an opportunity to do that. We are also going to be sending out lists of resources. And so we will use your email to communicate with you that way as well. So before we get started here, formally and officially, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to want to, there we go. Definitely going to want to welcome you again, and also to thank our sponsors, Alina Health and Tom Lutz and Associates Counseling. Both of them are sponsoring this webinar series, and we're very appreciative. I want to encourage you, if you have not had a chance, to register for tomorrow's webinar with Derek Peterson, circling back around about the web of support and really talking about families and what's working in families and how we can build on those strengths. I've already talked about the recordings and the resources and the evaluation. And because we do have a lot of information that we're sharing, we want to encourage you to use the chat. The chat function will be in the bottom of your screen. Again, if you're on a laptop or a desktop computer, you're able to type in messages and you're able to send information or website or resources out. And we'll use that if you have some questions throughout the presentation, and then a chance for Q&A at the end of the presentation. And we'll just go back and let me introduce to you Mary Mellick, who is the Executive Director of the United Way of Hastings. And she's just going to take a second and welcome you and tell you about us. Mary.
Thank you, Jane. Welcome, everyone. We're so pleased to have you here today. You know, this is the fourth in our webinar in our series, and we've been covering many topics over this series, and they're very, very important topics. Thank you for joining. Just a little bit of information about the United Way of Hastings. We've been in our community here in the Hastings area for over 55 years. Every dollar we raise stays right here in our community. If you look at the slide that's on your screen, we run several programs in the community, a backpack program for students, of course, this Helping Kids Succeed initiative, several other initiatives, as well as funding other nonprofits in our community that are providing direct services. We collaborate with many, many groups in the community, whether that's the faith community, health community, and we have 4 meetings a year through the Helping Kids Succeed community partners. Out of those meetings, this series of webinars was born. So we're very pleased to have you here. These offerings are free. If you find they're of value, please feel free to donate to United Way of Hastings. And Jane, I'll turn it right back to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mary. Okay, we're going to start with our speakers here. Our speakers today are Carolyn Felty and Sandy Woolsey from Campus Health. And I believe Cassie Ryan will be joining us from the Hastings School District, which is great. I'm going to let the two of them introduce themselves, and we're going to take it from here. So Carolyn, go right ahead.
Hi, thank you, Jane. As Jane said, I'm Carolyn Felty. I'm the manager of our school-based programs at Campus Health. We call ourselves TAP, the Therapeutic Assistance Program, and we do school-based embedded therapy in Hastings. So we have therapists in all of the school buildings for those kiddos who need therapy and wouldn't be able to get it outside of school. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that works better for kids and families. And we've been in Hastings for about 10 years. We have a great partnership with them. I have a big spiel about the TAP program and more information if you're interested, but I'll save that for the end. Sandy?
Hi, my name is Sandy Woolsey, and I am a supervisor in the TAP program, and I help supervise the therapists that are in the Hastings schools.
Great. And like Jane said, I think Cassie is joining us today, but as you can imagine, working in a school building, sometimes you get pulled in a whole bunch of different directions. So hopefully she'll join us when she can. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can do, can everybody see? Yeah. I'm going to see if I can put it on slideshow mode. You see now? Yes? Great. All right. So as I've been talking a little bit about how I'm doing an hour-long presentation on the impact of COVID and how to address it, most people's response is to laugh at me because, of course, this is a huge topic to talk about in 1 hour. So we will do our best to cover some highlights, and we have some information at the end of the slide, which will be available if you want to kind of take a deeper dive and learn more about certain topics. So the first caveat is, how does it affect our youth? Well, it's affecting everyone differently. I think there's a lot of information out there about COVID and distance learning and just living through a pandemic being a trauma. And for some people, it really is. It's stress that is activating our brains and causing us just big discomfort, and it's very, very difficult for some of our youth. For others of us, both grown-ups and youth, it's stressful, but it's tolerable. We're making it through. We're more stressed, but we're getting through it. And even for some, we've heard students who actually prefer distance learning or doing a lot better without the social stress of going to school, being able to stay at their homes where they feel comfortable. So I just want to put that out as a caveat because really it's different for every single kid and every single family. There has been some research about a whole bunch of topics, and I'm going to kind of go into them right now. A lot of concern about increased suicide during this time. There isn't numbers right now that the suicide rates have gone up in 2020, but there are pockets of communities where they are going up. And the environment is kind of ripe for it. There's increased isolation, increased stress, and decreased connections with people, decreased access to supports that are really helpful for kids. And so those things are really ripe. Those things we know are difficult for students and sometimes can lead to suicide. Overall, it doesn't look like on a national wide picture that's been the case across the board, but in some communities it has been. Increased school failure, there's a lot of research about that. More kids are failing, more kids aren't showing up for class, they're struggling, which I don't know if that's really surprising to any of us, right? They're doing school in a whole different way. We're asking kids and teenagers to do school in a way no one's ever had to do school before in the history of the world. And teachers haven't had to teach that way either. So there's a huge learning curve for how to do it in the best way, how to be engaging, even how to like navigate all these different systems. I know I'm a parent too, and figuring out how to get on Seesaw and Skyward and Google Meet, it's a challenge. It's been a big curve. So it's been difficult for lots of kids. Increased hospitalizations. There is data across Minnesota and across the country that hospitalizations due to mental health concerns are on the rise. There's some theories about this, right? Which is kind of what I talked about with the decreased access to other supports. So kids don't have maybe that school counselor or that favorite teacher that they can just pop in and talk to. Even some of our supports, the school-based therapy supports, are harder to get. You know, you have to like log into a meeting and reach out. You can't just kind of get noticed that you're having a hard time. So those things have been a real challenge for kids. And I think part of the reason why we've been seeing the hospitalization numbers go up. Increased anxiety. Again, I don't know if anyone's going to be surprised by that. I personally have increased anxiety. There's just a lot to be anxious about right now. A lot of scary things that are happening in the world. So that's real. That's a real thing. Increased sleep disorders. That, you know, struggling with sleep goes hand in hand with worrying about things, and increased mental health concerns. Increased depression. You have more time by yourself, more isolation. We'll talk more about some of that stuff in a minute. And that leads to those depressive symptoms. Financial stress and worry. So many people have lost their jobs, haven't been able to work, have had, for a whole bunch of different reasons, significant financial challenges during this time. Grief and loss. You know, this week we hit our 500,000 mark of people who have passed, and that's affecting a lot of people. And not to mention all the other reasons that people have passed during this time. You know, COVID hasn't been the only reason why we have had losses this year. And because of COVID, many people haven't been able to be with their families during this time. Many people haven't been able to have typical funerals and memorial services the way that we've always done that in the past, and that's been a challenge. You haven't been able to go to hospitals to say goodbye to people. Those things have been really difficult. And of course, there's evidence that there's been more drug and alcohol use and concern about that. Okay, so a couple contributing factors, and I think that this is important. Hopefully you can see this. If not, I will chat my way through it all. So what makes, you know, some of these things really hard for some people, and other people are handling them, and they're not super hard. And there's a whole bunch of factors about that, but here are some of them. You know, one of the things that's making COVID perhaps more of a trauma for people is the uncertainty. And there's uncertainty for all of us right now. And some people handle uncertainty better than other people. I would not be one of those people that handles uncertainty. I like to plan everything out every day for months ahead of time. And that's just not something you get to do during COVID. You can't plan that out. The second you think you have a good plan, the whole world flips upside down and you're not going back to school. I know my daughter went back to school for 2 days, and then they had a COVID exposure in their class, and everyone was home again. So even when you think you know what's going to happen, it's changing all the time. The social isolation and loneliness is a big factor, and I think we're all worried about that. But I think the key is not that we're all at home, but how we're feeling about it, right? Some kids are really liking the time. They feel safe. They're spending time with their family. Other kids are really isolated and lonely. And that loneliness, there's some research in some of those articles at the end talk about loneliness and how that can really affect mental health, depression. Parental angst, I mean, this goes hand in hand, right? If you're struggling, if there's a lot going on your plate, that's harder for kids. Kids really use us as regulating partners and people to help them remain calm and deal with stressful things. And the more stressed we are, which I think lots of people are, then the harder it is for the kids. Screen time. Well, this is a big topic too. I could probably talk about for a whole hour today. And I think we all know there's a lot more screen time these days than there was pre-COVID. You have to do it for work, you have to do it for school, you have to do it to hang out with your friends. And so there's a lot of opportunities to be on screens, and screens aren't all bad. There's a lot of good things that are happening from screens. I think kids who have connections with their friends, who are chatting online, who are playing video games with them online, that's really helping their mental health. Some of those feelings of loneliness aren't there. On the other hand, some of those kids who maybe are on social media a lot, who maybe are experiencing bullying, maybe they're spending time on more inappropriate sites, looking at porn, those things aren't helpful for mental health. And there's a lot of research that is a negative outcome. So what's the message behind screen time? I'm a mom who's been working this whole time. My message is not no screen time. I've had kids at home. What do you do when you're working? But I think the message is monitor it, be careful, talk to your kids about safety, figure out how to have those things in place so that they don't get into situations that aren't great. Pre-existing risk factors. So what's the deciding factor on if kids are going to struggle more during this time or not? A lot of things, and some of them are if they have lower cognitive abilities. Maybe this is really hard for them to understand. It's hard for all of us to understand, but maybe even more so for your kiddo. Special needs, socio-ecological factors really have a big impact. Trauma history, depression, mental health history. If your kid was already struggling with anxiety and then we put all of this anxiety on top of them, it's going to be harder for them than kids who maybe didn't have some of those things happening pre-COVID. Our next one is racial trauma, which also could be its own training. And I think a really big topic, but I wanted to raise it up because especially in Minnesota this year, there's been, since the murder of George Floyd, some significant racial unrest, and that's really been brought to the forefront as a difficulty. And this can really affect kids. It affects them and their brain in the same way racism does as other traumas do. And I think is another factor that is layered on top of the stressors of the year. Again, I have political angst. I'm like, how do you rate that, right? What's been happening this year? There's so much politics and a lot of feelings behind it for people on all sides of all issues. And I think that kids who are aware of that, who are maybe involved in conversations about that, that's increasing kids' stress about the world. And that doesn't mean they shouldn't know. It's very appropriate for high schoolers to know what's going on in the world, right? But how are we talking with kids about this? How are we making sure they're kind of integrating what's happening? How do we make sure they feel safe? Even though sometimes the world feels scary. Okay, so I asked all of our therapists in the schools, what were their impressions? How do they think kids are doing? And this is just anecdote from our Hastings High School therapist, but I wanted you guys to be able to see what she thinks because she's in your community in the high school. And she says, I think it's safe to say that the percentage of students who learn best in distance learning is fairly slim. Students across the board are struggling academically with lack of structure. They feel overwhelmed by too many Zoom meetings per day. Zoom meetings do not feel the same as attending class in school. Family tension is increased with everyone working from home, doing school at home, wearing both hats of being a parent and a professional at the same time. Students, particularly those with the diagnosis of ADHD, are struggling with procrastination and falling behind in classes. I see depression, anxiety, isolation, overall family stress is increased. When tension and anxiety is increased with the whole family, it can be more challenging to find understanding for teenagers who seem to be avoiding schoolwork and scrolling on their phones and playing video games. Isn't that the truth? So I know on previous trainings this week, you guys have talked a lot about these different disorders. So I'm not going to talk about them for a long time, but there were a few things that I just wanted to kind of highlight. One of them being, we're hearing a lot from teachers and parents, how do I know if my kid has anxiety or depression, or if it's just COVID, if it's just stress from COVID? And I think one thing to really think about is if you're having symptoms of anxiety and it's getting in the way of your ability to kind of do what you need to do, or your friendships or your relationships, that's anxiety, and that's worthy of getting support for. It doesn't really matter the cause of the anxiety. I mean, it will down the road as you're getting help, but I think COVID anxiety is still real anxiety. And so I think a lot of people have been putting off some of these things like, oh, well, they're just feeling isolated because of school distance learning or COVID. And those are real things still, real things to pay attention to. So I wanted to highlight that. Also, as you look at the list, and I'm not going to read them all because I know you guys talked about this, but there's a lot of symptoms that overlap between different things. So I think it's good to just be curious with your kids. about if they are having difficulty concentrating, you'll notice difficulty concentrating in almost all of these. Maybe it's not that school's boring or that they're not trying hard, but really that something else is going on. And that might be a key thing that you kind of want to check in with them about what that's about. I've added some other things on here too. Addiction, I think, is a tricky one sometimes for parents to know, right? Because some of the keys about addiction, you don't maybe know. They don't maybe tell you like, oh, mom, I have to drink a lot more than I used to get high, to get drunk. So one thing I think to think about is if you're noticing big changes in your kiddo behaviorally, in their sleep, in their eating, in their appearance, that's something to take note of. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're using drugs or alcohol. It could be they're feeling more anxious. It could be a whole bunch of things. It could be distance learning has led us all to wear sweatpants too many days in a row. But I think those things are things to really pay attention to. And the other thing I wanted to point out on this slide about grief and loss is that grief is a really natural reaction to loss. So kids feeling distress, periods of sadness, anxiety, all of these things after someone passes is completely normal and something we would expect from them. That might not, it might still help for them to have a person to talk to about that, but I would kind of expect kids to feel that way if they experience loss. Okay, so I have this slide up here and it has adjustment disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and trauma and other stress-related disorders on here. And these are three things that we work with a lot when we sort of diagnose kids with what's going on. And I just kind of wanted to point out this spectrum again of how this might be affecting people differently. Everybody's talking COVID's a trauma, COVID's a trauma. It might be. There may be something that has happened. Someone's, died in front of kids. There's been some really big loss, some huge stressor that's causing difficulty in the family, that's causing kind of this post-traumatic stress disorder that we would diagnose. And it might just be, this is so stressful. I'm having a real hard time kind of adjusting to it. And I need some support because the stress of it is getting in the way of my ability to kind of do school. And it's getting in the way of my ability to have good relationships with other people in my life. And that might be more on the adjustment disorder side of it. So it's really a spectrum. You don't have to wait for your kid to be way over here to get support. Even if it's over here, that's a good time to reach out. I think, well, let's watch this video. I like it. I'm going to stop my sharing so I can get to the other screen quick. Okay, this is a video I'm going to share, and I think I've shared with sound, so let me know if you can hear it, really on how stress affects your brain. And this is kind of talking about trauma, but I think it's good for us to have as a background. So here we go.
Here comes time for a little, and just like that, here comes the sunbasket.
YouTube. Now it's loading. I don't know what Sunbasket is. I'm not advertising it necessarily.
Never fails, right?
Always, every time. Oh, now I've clicked on Sunbasket. Okay. Let me try one more time. If it doesn't work, we'll just skip it. Okay.
You can put the link in the chat too. People could look at it later.
It's on the PowerPoint. It's on the PowerPoint. I'll stop sharing and we'll do it. Well, you guys can check it out on your own. It's in the PowerPoint. I'm going to shut it off so that it doesn't start going on us here in a minute when I turn it off. Check it out later. I think the thing that's that I really like about it is it talks about both kind of stress on the brain, which maybe some of you already know, but chronic stress on our brain does actually change our brain. It changes the way our brain is thinking about things. And one thing that it talks about in here is it can change how our brain works for generations. They've done some research that kiddos who, rats, they did the research on rats. The rats who experience trauma, right, significant stress, that they have similar reactions. Their babies have similar reactions to stress, even if they haven't experienced it themselves, and their babies do. So this can really be passed on through generations in a change of your brain, which the science nerd in me just, that's fascinating. So check it out when you have time later. It's right there on the slideshow. All right. So that was kind of doom and gloom for me. And what I want to focus on now is just there's really good news. Even though stress changes your brain can change all the time. There's neuroplasticity. Your brain can change back, and we can teach our brains to remain calm and use our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain, and grow new neural connections. And there's a bunch of ways to do that. And so we're going to talk about that now. Mindfulness, relationships, I have highlighted because we're going to talk about that. Calming, sensory things, co-regulating, that's helping your co-regulating partner, your kiddo, calm down. Yoga, safe experiences. These things all help build new connections in your brain. So resiliency, I stole this from the dictionary. An ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. One thing I want to talk about resiliency though, is sometimes we talk about it as if it's something you're born with, as if some kids are resilient and some kids are not. And actually, that's not really what it is. Resiliency is a whole bunch of factors, most of which are out of kids' control. So I have a couple different sources here that I want to share with you. One, what makes some kids more resilient than others? Mastery, how much perceived control individuals have over their life and circumstances. That's tricky right now, as we addressed earlier. But there are ways, right, that we can have kids have mastery and control in little ways in their life. And so thinking about adding that in is really helpful. And also something that really fits, I think, with the webs of support and what you guys have been learning about all week is this social support. Supportive people that kids can have open communication with about what's going on, about their stressors. This is what makes them resilient. Not that they were born resilient, but that they have people that they can talk to. The most significant determinant of resilience, noted in nearly every review or study of resilience in the last 50 years, is the quality of our close personal relationships, especially with parents and primary caregivers. Early attachments to parents play a crucial lifelong role in human adaptation. How loved you felt as a child is a great predictor of how you will manage all kinds of difficult situations later in life. So this is great news. And as a parent, it makes me feel like I can feel like tingly from it, right? Like I just have to love my kid. I don't have to figure out how to distance learn in the best way and like do all of these things and cure COVID because I can't do that, right? I just have to be there and help them regulate. And that is the thing that's gonna help them. Look, I got all like, oof, it's you. Okay, one more thing for me, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Sandy. I think there's also this sort of idea right now that once we get all the kids back in school, everything's gonna be fine. And then everyone will be fine. All of the stress will go away, all of the, and if we think about it longer than that, of course, we know that that's probably not the case. So a few things just to kind of think about and hold in your mind. Going back to school is going to be a huge change and transition for our kids, for us too. I know it's making my days easier while I'm working, having my kids at school, but man, is it making my mornings and evenings harder to try to like get everything organized and the lunches and it's hard for kids. They have the last one on there, that tolerant stamina for long days. That's something we're seeing across the board at schools, that kids are not used to having so much stimulation all day, working on academics for so long. They're tired. They're so tired. And just giving us all grace on that. It's going to take a while to adjust. Increased anxiety. We have been putting out there how much you have to be careful, how far away you have to stay from everyone. And that's just not really possible. My first grader comes home and tells me who doesn't wear their mask the right way and how so-and-so got too close to them. And there's a lot of new things to worry about if you're a kid. And I think that's real. Also, all of our teachers are worried about those things too. So holding some grace for our teachers as they navigate that increased anxiety that they have about going back to school and how it might be more difficult for them to be that support person for our kid because they have all this extra stress. And then, you know, less practice with social situations. I think a lot of kids haven't been practicing how to negotiate some of those tricky things, or maybe are now in the middle school and they haven't really been yet. And that's, well, man, the middle school is a new thing to figure out. So I just think everyone needs some grace, and it's going to take a while before we see this as a big change. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Okay, more from me in a little bit, but I'm going to turn it over to Sandy now.
All right, thank you. Okay, so what do we do with all of this? How do we enter into self-care for ourselves? And we'll start with parents. We've got a section for kids coming up too. But what can we do as parents to cope, de-stress, just get through this while we're in COVID and beyond that? I'm going to walk us through something called the PRN framework. This was created by Diana Tikaz in 2020, and there's a handout attached that you can look through. I encourage you to take a peek at it. And it's from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, which also has a wealth of resources if you ever want to Google that and take a peek at that. All right, and so PRN stands for pause, reset, nourish, to promote our well-being. All right. So the first one, pause. So pause is about checking in with how your body is feeling at the present moment. In day-to-day life, we're rushing around, our kids are rushing around. It's hard to know where we're at within ourselves. And so one of the things we can do to help check in and go internally is we start with, and you can do this with us if you like, you start with taking a slow, I tell my clients, a big belly breath. Oftentimes we breathe from our chest, and when we breathe, our chest goes out. Well, what we actually want is for your belly to get big. So when you breathe in, you want your belly to get big. The physiological reason for this is it hits some nerves behind your stomach. There's a big polyvagal theory on that if you're interested in that, but it sends a message up to your brain to physiologically calm your body down. So we start with taking a slow, big belly breath. And you can do this a few times. And there's many ways to breathe. Everyone has their own way that they teach. There's square breathing, where you breathe in for a couple seconds and breathe out, breathe in and breathe out. There's 3-3-3 breathing, where you breathe in for 3 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds, breathe out for 3 seconds. Find one that fits for you. And then we turn our attention inward. And as you do a body scan, you notice, where is there tension? Where are you holding stress? Where are you feeling some intense emotions? Or like Carolyn had talked about, perhaps in there you're grieving the loss of a loved one, grieving the loss of structure or daily routine or friends that you used to see, but going internally to see what's going on in there, and that will give us information for how to proceed. All right, next one, please. All right, so the second piece that we pay attention to is reset. So once we have some clues about what's going on internally, then we go to the reset part. This is something where you're actively doing something to help you feel steadier, more focused, calmer, and being kind to yourself. A couple slides ago, Carolyn had mentioned giving oneself grace. That has been my new word with my clients for the last few months, giving yourself grace, being kind to yourself. So different things that you can do when you notice your mind is full. You could reset by meditation. There's all sorts of ways to do this. You can Google meditation and pick one that fits you. Taking a short walk outside. Now that it's nicer, we could do that. Some of you were probably brave souls and did that the last couple weeks. Stretching is something you can do very quickly. It only takes a couple seconds, a minute. One of my favorite ones is taking a mini mind vacation to your happy place. I think we all need this. Lots of people who know me know mine is kind of overseas. I love to go into the Cotswolds in London and with the flowers and the little cottages. I know others, clients, colleagues who like to go to the beach, but I think going there, bringing into your mind the senses. What are you smelling? What are you seeing? What are you noticing? The more you practice it, the more you develop those little roads in your brain, the connections that will take you there faster. Great way to just get away for a minute. When negative experiences are overwhelming, we acknowledge them. And then we try to reset by maybe using positive affirmations. Some people really like to start their day with positive affirmations. It sets the tone for their day. Sharing gratitude, talking with someone, and practicing grounding techniques. Carolyn, and maybe in the other sessions, I think I talked about anxiety. With my clients, we always practice grounding techniques, and this is something that you can do super easily at home. You can, it's as simple as even noticing yourself in your chair, noticing how the chair is holding you, noticing your feet or toes in your shoes, noticing maybe the fabric of the chair, noticing what's around you. Some people like to ground by kind of thinking that there's a cord running from the top of their head all the way through their body and grounding them into the earth. All sorts of ways that you can do that, but it helps us bring in, helps us center ourselves and do whatever that does. Okay. When unsure how you're feeling, but recognize you're uncentered, we kind of talked a little bit about this. Acknowledge it, let it pass through your mind like a cloud. This is a DBT skill for those of you who are familiar with the DBT. I think they use Teflon mind, where it kind of comes in and then it slides out. With my clients, I use the imagery of a cloud coming in. Maybe it hangs around, but clouds never stay for too long, so it goes on. But we want to make sure that we're observing the feeling or the thought or the sensation and acknowledging it. Another thing to try when you become critical of yourself, you can reset by interrupting those thoughts with self-compassion, that grace we talked about, even talking, one of the things that we work with parents and kids is, what would you tell a friend? Oftentimes we're much nicer to our friends than we are to ourselves. So if you're going through something and you're being self-critical, you're being hard on yourself, so many of us are way too hard on ourselves. What would you say to a friend? And then maybe consider taking your own advice, right? And then I'm a big one for bringing in the five senses. We talked a little bit about this already, but wrapping up in a blanket like a burrito, lighting a scented candle, drinking warm tea or cold water. There's all sorts of things that we can do with that. And then nourish, engaging in something that replenishes your mind, body, heart, soul, spirit. Thinking about something that has been rewarding at home, at work, maybe you got to see a friend that you haven't seen for a while, noticing those meaningful moments. Going back to affirmations, consider affirmations or reminders that help you feel feel grounded, help you deal with the stress or challenges you're facing. Sometimes that positive self-talk can really help us get through some tough times. Takes a little practice. My clients will tell me, Sandy, that is not easy. Takes a little practice, but it really, it can help. And engaging in moments of playfulness. As adults, we forget about this. We forget to play. And so bringing it back into the family with playing with your kids, with your animals, bringing in some lightheartedness, those meaningful social connections that we're all really craving right now. And, you know, even if it's a Zoom call with a loved one or someone you haven't talked with, how do we connect? And connecting with our kids in person, donating time to charity, baking for a neighbor. That sounds lovely, baking for a neighbor. And so we're back to Carolyn, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. And, you know, I want to just highlight the reason Sandy's talking about this is we all know, right, that if you are going to be the person and your relationship with your kid is going to be the thing that helps them, then you really have to be in a great place. You have to be able to be regulated. So taking care of yourself, just like that oxygen mask, get the on the airplanes, put yours on so you can get your kiddos on. We'd love for you to share if you have a great way that you found to take care of yourself during the pandemic, just in the chat with everyone. We know you all have wise ideas. So please go in and type something if you have a great idea, and we'll keep going because I know we're getting close to our time.
Okay, so how do we help our kids through COVID? So we've talked about ways that we can kind of ground ourselves, help ourselves. What can we do with our kids? So movement is really, really important, whether it's outside, inside, getting back to that playfulness, crawling around on the floor with your kids or playing, you know, as Simon says, red light, green light, twister, whatever you have, just moving with them. Kids love to go out and just kick around a soccer ball. Maybe you do that with them, that engagement, that connection. We're looking for those moments of connection. Movement is huge. The next one, creating space for feelings. So our kids have a lot of feelings. We know this. Carolyn talked about this. We need to create space for our kids to know that it's okay to feel the feels. It's okay to feel what's coming up. We want to acknowledge it. We want to allow the feeling. Doesn't mean they can tear up the house or do any of that, but we want to create space to know that anger, sadness, frustration, even, you know, if they're feeling pretty good about being home because, you know, they prefer doing school from home, creating space for the feelings and acknowledge that. Incorporating practices to calm. This is that co-regulation that Carolyn hit on about how do we help our kids calm through this. And one of the ways that we can do this is to model for them. We can teach them how to do the belly breathing, or even if they see us being frustrated, how do we reset? How do we model for them in any given moment what we're doing so they see that? And then maybe they try it on for size, or we say, look how mommy just did that, right? And let's try it together. Let's try it together. And then restoring connection. When there's ruptures in the relationships, repair is really important. Kids, I kid you not, kids love to hear a parent say, I'm sorry I messed up. I am sorry I blew up. I am sorry that I just lost my stuff there, right? Lots of my clients will tell me, I've never heard that before. I've never heard an adult telling me I'm sorry that I messed up. And then connecting with them, whether it's, you know, hugs, watching movies, the eye contact is really important. We're really busy right now in COVID. Lots of us are working from home. We've got our kids trying to do school, and those moments of connection are just not as available as perhaps they were before. But even if you've got a minute to just look at your child and let them know you see them, let them know you hear them, and let them know that if, they come up to you and they're like, the school's really frustrating me, I can't get it, and you're in the middle of a meeting, hey, you know what? I hear you, I see you. I want to talk about this with you. Give me 10 minutes, right? And then I will come find you and then follow through, right? Come find them. Those little bits of attention for a minute here, a minute there can really make a huge difference. And then we talked a little bit already about the modeling, the breathing, taking play breaks, noticing your own feelings, establishing clear routines. This is hard. This is hard in COVID. Kids do well with routines. We just do the best we can. We just get through the day. Give opportunity for kids to have some control, give them choices. Do you want to have this for lunch or this for lunch? Do you want to do this first or play first? Do you want to, the more options and the more choices they have, the more control that they feel in a time where many of us feel like we don't have any control. And then creating a sense of security and hope. This too shall pass. You are okay. I've got you, right? We will figure this out. I will figure this out. You are okay and you are safe.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
So I don't think Cassie has joined us yet, but I just will kind of highlight quickly, and then I know we'll try and save some time for questions too. The schools at Hastings do have a lot of resources. If you're concerned about your kids, sometimes that's a great place to start. Not only are there school staff there, but they know about resources like our program and other community resources. You can reach out. I'll let you read some of this since Cassie isn't here, but these are some sort of strategies if your kid is struggling specifically with being motivated about school or being engaged in that distance learning, some ideas about how to help them with that. I don't know if people feel up to or brave enough to throw in the chat some strategies that you found really helpful with kids. I would love to hear them. I know I'm getting most of my ideas from my mom and dad Facebook pages. They have all sorts of helpful ideas.
I was just saying there's some really good suggestions in the chat. If folks have not turned that on, you've got controls again down at the bottom of your screen. Check those out because there's some really good suggestions people are making.
Right now, but I'll go check it out.
And I just popped in a link to AHA slides, and we'll collect some information and share that back with the group. So if you prefer to type, you could just click that link to the slides, and we'll gather that and we'll share that back with the group in our email.
Great, thanks, Jane. Before we go to questions, just a little bit of information about our program, the Therapeutic Assistance Program. I talked about that a little bit, TAP, and this is on the slides, but I also included on the website some more information. Right now we have 3 people that are serving all of the different Hastings schools, and we do have therapy there. We have a grant through DHS, so for kids who maybe don't have insurance or families who have those really super high deductibles, we can help with some of those things. If you need support and you think that would be a good option for your family, I recommend reaching out to the school. They know exactly which person is in which building and how to connect with us. This is here too, so we can see all of that when you're ready. All right, I'm going to stop my sharing. Great. Well, that's what we have for you today. We'd love to answer any questions. Oh, look, there's a baby.
Awesome. There's a busy mom, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Although as I learned as my daughter got older, I'm not sure I was any less busy. It was just a different type of busy. That's great. Some great suggestions. I love the fact that they're very positive, practical ideas that people can take away and do and try. But yeah, if there are questions that you have, you can pose those in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, just ask. We've got a lot of expertise here, and I'll check out the, why don't I do a quick screen share and we'll show you the answers that are coming in with the AHA slides. This is just a really fun tool that we've been using. You can click that link, and whether you're on a laptop or you're on your smartphone, you can type type answers, and it'll actually pop up here on the screen. So I think it's very validating for people to see other parents and other caregivers, their ideas. So the question we asked was, name 3 things you found helpful in today's presentation. And several people are saying, okay, to feel the anxiety. I think that's very validating. The mindset techniques, the fact that there are supports at the schools, and to model the pause. I like that. I think that's a good way to put that. So you can continue to type and answer in those. I think we have it set up. You could answer up to 3 ideas if you want to share those. And
Jane, I'm just reading the chat, and I love this idea that came in about the chess set and the continuous game going. I think that's so great. And one of those things that Sandy was talking about those short moments of connection, right? Before we had like, all right, see you later, go to school, and then we were disconnected, and then we connected. But now there's a lot more kind of like little mini connection, coming in and coming out, coming in and coming out. And the chess game is just like a beautiful representation of that, I think.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I read a great comment online about acknowledging that the fact that our students are going through this, as are we, and recognizing the strengths in that. While there are many challenges and lots of discomfort, there are also some things that we and our kids are learning to do well. And in some cases, it's making us stronger. And by acknowledging that to our young people, like, you are overcoming a lot, you are dealing with a lot of issues, and I'm really proud how you're handling it, or I'm happy, or I feel great when I see you, really working hard to figure things out. Just taking the time to acknowledge anything that's positive in what's being experienced. I thought that was a great reminder.
I also love this comment about sort of just recognizing that kids are recognizing when they need a break, and, really praising that with your kiddo. What a cool thing, right? If we all knew when we'd had enough and we asked for help, it'd be a better place all around, I think. It's a great idea.
Great suggestion about putting a tent up in their rooms when COVID first started. Played in it, read in it, slept in it, just something different, kind of out of the ordinary. I bet they really enjoyed that. That's a great suggestion. And I was talking with a friend the other day, and she and her husband have made a point now to do movie night one night a week, and they alternate it with game night. And I don't remember what day of the week they picked, but say it's a Monday night. Like every other Monday, they take turns picking the movie the family will watch, and then the other Monday, they take turns picking the games that they'll play. And their kids are young enough, kind of 10, 11, 12, that age group, that they're happy to do it. And as they get older, as teens, they're like, we've now established a routine. And so we could go back and talk about, this is how our family does it. So you're going to have to, balance family with friends. So I thought that was pretty smart too. Some great suggestions that are coming in.
Yes, we've had lots of forts at my house too.
We're saving the chat, and so the great ideas, we'll make those available. Not every session has had such good interaction in the chat, so we'll pop this up on the resources section. We'll have all that up to date next week. So lots of great information will be available there, at least for quite a while.
Oh my gosh, Amanda, monthly massages.
Monthly massages.
I
wish I was Amanda to be my mom. Yeah.
That's great.
That's a great idea.
Yes, only once a month though.
Still good. It's a great idea. And for yourself, if you've never had a massage as an adult, I am here to tell you it is one of the best things you can do for your mental and your physical health. I have done this several times in the last year. I've had some physical issues, like I strained my shoulders, and I was amazed at what a difference it made when working with a good massage therapist who understands muscles and the body, and it really helped repair. It helped those come back. They're doing just fine. So get a massage, treat yourself. It's well worth it. Cassie does. Yes, excellent. Partner and I go out to breakfast once a weekend. I think that's an awesome idea. And Erin, I love the comment about helping your young kids identify feelings and colors. And so I feel red today, I feel blue, I feel green. Of course, that ties in with the Helping Kids Succeed model too in some ways, but yeah, just giving them some language, some way to express what they're feeling. That sounds like a great idea. Any other suggestions? These are excellent. And we've got more great comments here on the slides. Anxiety and depression, moments of connection. I think these are things that you're taking away. Mindset techniques, those have been fantastic. And yesterday, the presentation, you can go look on YouTube, it's up there. Today's will be on YouTube later today. And you can go back and see what the recommendations are for the apps that you can use to help with relaxation and mindfulness. Fantastic. Thank you all so much for being willing to share such great information. I think that really helps. That's one of the reasons we wanted to do the webinars, is to make connections with each other and to let everybody know that, we're kind of all in this together, and we're working to support each other and to support the young people around us. Any other questions or comments that anyone has before we're getting close to the time here? We will stay on the call for a few extra minutes. We'll turn off the camera in a minute. And if anybody does have questions that they would prefer to ask privately or not on camera, we did that yesterday. You're welcome to stay for a few minutes, and we'll see if there's anything that you want to know that Carolyn and Sandra can help with. And I'm just going to put up here, I want to make sure we acknowledge our sponsors for today's webinar. We've had the support of Alina Health and Tom Lutz and Associates. Again, I encourage you to register for tomorrow if you haven't. And the resources and the recordings will be on our website and our YouTube channel. You will be getting an email evaluation. I am a day behind, so you'll get one today for yesterday's webinar and probably tomorrow for today's webinar. But again, if you wouldn't mind just taking probably 2 or 3 minutes to fill that out, very helpful for us. And then you might notice if you go by our office, you'll see that we have boxes of light bulbs sitting there. These are from Xcel Energy and Greenlight. It's a free 4-pack of 60-watt LED bulbs. They're actually pretty good. I put one in my lamp here in the office, and they're a little brighter than the LED that I had previously. You're welcome to stop by and pick those up. They're free. And of course, if you found value in the webinars, we'd love to have a donation. But you can contact us at any of these different social media sites. We do have a presence on Facebook. On Instagram, we're working on Instagram, and a little bit on LinkedIn as well. Any other questions that anyone has before we turn off the cameras? All right, well, again, I thank you very much. We'll go ahead and turn off the cameras, and if anybody wants to stay and ask questions, we'll be available. Thanks, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you all.